like the fake humility. That's a part of the imposter syndrome, right? Where you're always talking down on yourself. That way somebody else can be like, oh, no, it's not like that. You're actually smart. So you're saying things to get positive affirmation or to get validation instead of just saying things that are just positive. All right. Well, Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to Shabbat Conversations with the Avads. I am Shad.
I'm Chris.
All right. Today we have a really good topic for you guys today. We're going to be talking about imposter syndrome. We're going to try to define it, explain what caused us to have imposter syndrome, or, if we're still dealing with it and things of that nature. What we need to do now is, I guess we'll just define what is imposter syndrome. So
I was gonna try to define it myself, like from what I understand it to mean and kind of my experience, but
okay.
I thought it'd be better if we actually got a definition.
But also define it from your own words too.
Yeah, but I want to give, because some people may not have heard of imposter syndrome, so I want to give a clinical scientific definition.
Okay.
Okay, this says imposter syndrome is a psychological experience of feeling like a fake or a phony despite any genuine success that you have achieved. It can show up in the context of work, relationship, friendships, or just overall. It is a very common and frustrating phenomenon because it holds us back from the self-confidence we've earned and deserve to feel. So I thought that was really a definition.
That was a good definition.
On verywellminded.com.
That's good. We'll break it down in your own words too. Like what? Like.
So the way that I was first introduced to it back in college, I think it was like my junior year of college, I was introduced to the concept. Or probably it just was put into words. I had been dealing with it for the whole time I was in college, probably before then. But I had never been able to put into words like what I was feeling. But I had a professor that kind of told me what it was. And it was just like this fear of getting exposed,
right.
Or like you being in a room and then you don't feel like you belong in the room, and not for anything that you've necessarily done to not belong in the room. You just feel like at some point somebody's going to figure out that you don't belong in the room.
Right.
So that was like how it was explained to me. And that was exactly what I was kind of going through.
I guess next we can talk about, our stories and kind of, how do we get imposter syndrome? Where did it come from? Trying to pinpoint how do we even get to this point to even have this kind of syndrome, right? So I guess you could start off and just talk a little bit about, your story and how did that come about?
Like I said, I never, was able to verbalize what I had been feeling until somebody else, verbalized it for me, that feeling for me. But going back to, I don't think in high school, I don't necessarily think I felt it. I had confidence in high school when it came to like my education and like being smart. I always kind of felt like I was smart in high school. That was never an issue. But I think going to, and I'm not making a race thing at all. I love my high school and the experience that I had. But like I was one of the only black girls in my class of a small like private Christian school. And so I don't think, even with that dynamic, I still never felt like I didn't belong. Like I felt like I belonged in those circles. And I felt like with the smart people, I can hang with the smart people. So I don't think that became an issue. It was really like it's always for me transitions. So the transition from high school to college is when it started. Because I'm like, okay, I was smart in high school, but that was only with the people I was with. Now I'm going to smarter people, and I will no longer be smart when I like transition to college, because it's gonna be a lot more people, and everybody is in college is gonna be smarter than me.
Right.
So then I kind of like that quickly went away when I got to college and realized, oh, okay, like I'm still afloat, like I'm still making good grades when I go to college, or whatever. But I think it really started for me probably the end of my freshman year. The end of my freshman year, I was still friends with somebody that I had been friends with since high school. We like came together. We were not together, but we transitioned to college together and remained friends because neither one of us really knew people. And we remained friends throughout the whole freshman year. And this was the same time I was really getting into research heavy. Like I started doing research on campus as soon as I got on campus, dang near, because I wanted more money, and somebody had put out an opportunity for me to make money and get through a scholarship if I did research. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna do research. It sounds interesting, but I just want the check that they're trying to give me. Right. So that was the motivation in the beginning. And so I got that research opportunity where I was getting paid, not really anything. It was like $2,500 a semester, but I was getting paid. And then through that, I was allowed to like present at conferences. So that meant I could travel to other places and present my research at conferences. It just gave me a lot of opportunities. And I remember my friend at the time he was going through the same thing of like trying to find scholarships and all that stuff. And my friend at the time was like, you're only getting those scholarships because of affirmative action. And that just kind of stuck in my head. This was a white guy who said it. And so I was just like, he was my friend, so I didn't really think nothing of it. But I was like, maybe so. Like, maybe it is. Because all the scholarships that I was getting at the time, especially freshman year, they were all minority scholarships. Mm-hmm. And so when that kind of stuck with me, I never, realized that I had internalized it until which I'll get to that. When I started going to therapy last year, around this time last year. And that was one of the biggest things that we talked about, like this whole anxiety around like transitioning to different phases of my life and then dealing with imposter syndrome. And that was one thing that she asked me, like, why do you feel like you don't belong in these rooms? Like, you don't belong in these circles. Like, you got accepted into these places. Your application was picked, or your whatever, you were picked for this stuff, so why do you feel like you don't belong? Right. And so, like, after thinking about that for a long time, I was reminded of him saying that. And I'm not blaming him for nothing, but it was just like, I think that was the seed that planted into like all of this stuff that I'm going through. It's just by chance. And so as time went on, I didn't ever think about that again. And I continued to do research. I continued to get opportunities and scholarships that were predominantly minority scholarships. And then leading up to me applying for pharmacy school, so it must have been senior year. I think it was senior year. Me and my research advisor I have been with since freshman year, we were obviously talking about the transition to like what's next. And I was really close to my research advisor. We were together for 4 years. So I had become really close to him. And he was a African man from Kenya. And so that was a whole other thing, because I'm like, we're both trying to navigate like being in Jonesboro, Arkansas, of all places, right, being minorities, and then being minorities in science. And so like I had never experienced black people, one, in STEM, and then at the high level position that I one day wanted to be in. And so of course had a lot of conversations about that dynamic or whatever. And so we had been come back from a research conference in New Orleans my senior year, and we got to talking about it. And I was just like, yeah, at this point I got accepted into pharmacy school, but I was still trying to decide if I wanted to get a PhD instead of going to pharmacy school. Yeah. And so I was just like I think I'll be okay in pharmacy school, because I know people who got into pharmacy school. I think that I'm as smart as them, so I don't have any issues with that. But for me, I'd never known anybody, especially my age, who got accepted into grad school to get a PhD. And so I was like, I'm not smart enough to get a PhD. It's no way for me to like... I can get into pharmacy school, but PhD, that's a whole nother level of like brainiac. And I'm not that smart. And so like we had that back and forth conversation, and I was like, I just feel like if I go on to get a PhD, people are going to eventually, I'm going to reach a ceiling and people are going to realize I'm not smart. Right. Like I'm not. You were good enough to be in these little rooms that you're in, but never past that. You were supposed to stop at these like little rooms that you were in. Yeah, so those little comments that you may have heard in high school or here and there, that stuff would come back up as far as, you doubting yourself. Yeah, for sure. It definitely led to me. Certain negative comments, yeah. Because even when I got accepted to pharmacy school, mind you, I feel like, and I'm not to brag, but like coming out of college, I had a 3.7 GPA. I had a research experience. Like I had everything that you should have had to try to apply to a professional school. Mm-hmm. And so, but in the back of my head, I'm still thinking, it's no way I'm going to get into pharmacy school. Like, it's no way. Right. And so then when I got into pharmacy school, when I got accepted, my first thought was, I must have got in because I was black. It was not ever because I was qualified. Never because I made good grades. Like, literally when they called me to say that I was accepted, that was my first thought. Like, I got in because I was black. Sidebar. Here's the thing with that, right? Because I know a lot of times we want to make it off of our, smarts, our wits, off of our ability, right? But I say all the time,
I don't care how I get a position.
And that's
I don't
true.
care
If I get
if
in the
you
door.
get it because I'm a male, because I'm black, because of whatever outer kind of criteria. Hey, I'm gonna get the position and I'm gonna kill that position. So you gotta think of it like this: like,
Yeah.
no matter how I get something, even if it's biased, even if it's because there's somebody trying to fill a quota. Hey, you get that position and you rock that position. You do the best once you get it. And prove to people
That you
that
do.
it is my ability, right? That I can do it, right? Because technically, let's say you get it because somebody's trying to meet a quota. If you're not good at it, they're gonna let you go anyway.
That's true.
So if you get it because of some kind of quota, just think of it like, hey, I can still do this job regardless of what somebody might think I got the job or how I got the job. I can do this job. Right.
And I'm learning to. That was one of the things that me and my therapist talked about. Because she's like, "Why does it matter? Like, if you did, I understand what you're saying, but like, you're here, so you're here, so that's really what matters." But going back to, at the time, so at this point, I've gotten accepted to pharmacy school, but I'm trying to debate if I want to apply for grad school to get a PhD. And so I'm trying to talk myself out of applying for grad school. I'm not about to set myself up for failure. It's no way I'm getting to grad school. I got lucky and got into pharmacy school. It's no way I'm gonna get lucky twice and get into another doctoral program or whatever. And so got to talk to my advisor and mustered up the courage. Well, so in this car ride that we had, he said he talked about imposter syndrome, and I was like, "What's that?" Like, I never heard of imposter syndrome, and he was like, "It's basically like this feeling that you're going to get found out, like that you're inadequate to be in the room that you're in, so you never feel good enough." And so how he compared it, he was like, it's people walk in a room and they're overconfident to the point that they basically pride themselves out of a position. It's the complete opposite for imposter syndrome. Like, you're so underconfident or unconfident and so like anxious about being found out that you just stop yourself from excelling. And so that's why I was like trying to stop myself from doing that, like to psych myself out. If I don't deserve to be here, then I won't be here. But as long as I'm here, then in my mind is what I'm trying to tell myself is I deserve to be here. Yeah. So long story short, it's gonna be long, but long story less long. I eventually applied for grad school and then got in, but same thing. I got in because they need more black people in the program. Because that was one question I asked in my interview to the program director. I said, when was the last time there was an African American woman accepted into this program? And the program director at the time, this was 7 years ago at this point, the program director at the time said it had been 14 years since they had an African American woman, but I haven't had an African American male in the program the entire time I've been there. But he specifically said it had been 14 years. To his knowledge, because he had been there for 14 years, they had not had an African American woman accepted into the program. So then, in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, that's the confirmation. Y'all just need some more black women in the program. Right. And to this day, I've been the only African American in the program the 6 years that I've been there, and the only African American woman. So either one, I've been the only one. Whatever. So that's obviously in the back of my head. Yeah. And then as we go to pharmacy school, it kind of fades away because, again, I transitioned. I was scared coming out of grad school. Coming out of undergrad into pharmacy school that I wasn't going to be good enough. So then when I get here and I'm still doing well, still making good grades, then it fades into the background because it's still there, but it fades in the background. And I think the biggest thing that I noticed as I was going through counseling with my therapist, that in pharmacy school, I could hide behind people. Like, I never felt like I was singled out. Like, it was enough of us in the class that nobody was going to single me out. Yeah. So it was like, in grad school, in pharmacy school, it was 200 people in my class. So even if I fail a test, nobody's going to notice that I failed a test because it's 200 of us in the class. So it's not like the spotlight would never be on me. Yeah. In pharmacy school. Yeah. That's how I felt. Right. I understand. So then transitioning, once I graduated from pharmacy school, and I transitioned to grad school, like full-time PhD, then it really, really ramped up. Like, that was the worst that my imposter syndrome had ever been, and like my anxiety had ever been. Okay, then transitioning, when I got through with pharmacy school, I guess that was 2022 was when I graduated. So then the natural progression of the dual degree program that I'm part of, you finish pharmacy school and then you go to the PhD program full-time. And so that was like where I started to feel the imposter syndrome really coming back with a vengeance, I say. Because then I'm like, okay, there's no more hiding. Grad school is very different from pharmacy school from the standpoint of like your progress depends on you. Classes are a lot smaller. We would have like classes with 6 people. Your committee members, like you go before your committee members all by yourself. There's no group work really. Like it's just you. You're in the lab by yourself a lot of time. You do stuff by yourself. And when they're looking for the answers, when they're looking for progress on your project, it's you. It all comes down to you. And so I was like, this is where I'm gonna get found out. Like this is where the road ends. I've always been able to get out of this, like feeling inadequate. I've always been able to get out, but this is where the road ends. I'm gonna get found out or whatever. So that really came to a vengeance. I guess it was last February because this was around the time that I started going into counseling or like therapy or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I started realizing where the root of all of that came from was this like feeling of that I never deserved to be in the positions I was in. And no matter, this is what was really significant. So, no matter what accomplishments I made, it never was good enough for me to deserve to be there. So it was all by chance. Like if I got a scholarship, I only got the scholarship because they needed more black people to get the scholarship. Or if I got accepted to present at a conference, then somehow in my mind they knew that I was black, and I needed to be. They needed to increase the diversity.
So would you say your imposter syndrome stemmed from, and every time you accomplish something, it was always because, well, I'm a female or I'm black or it's not good enough because I'm not necessarily nobody's telling me, hey, congratulations.
Yeah.
Or, you are so great at A, B, and C is always from the standpoint of, dang, I've never been told I'm good enough, so therefore I don't think I'm good enough.
I don't even think it's necessarily that I feel like I was told, and I had to realize this too. Like I feel like I have, from my support system to my family, I feel like I'm told enough times like I'm proud of you, you're doing a great thing.
Yeah.
But that validation is not the same as getting validated by people in your field. So I feel like I never received the validation from the people in my field. And
you just talking about like college and
like
what about like high school and
I mean but this is a different level now. I feel like I don't know, like it's just not the same. I feel like it was almost even if people told me it was like a sympathy thing. Like I would take it as like they're just being nice. Not necessarily like, I always talk myself out of feeling like I deserve or I'm supposed to be here. And I think that's a part of imposter syndrome. Like you just always kind of talk yourself out of the confidence. Anything that can make you feel confident in your abilities, you talk yourself out of it. Because it's like always a caveat. There's a catch. Yeah, and I'm a very pessimistic person.
Yeah, so you feel like everything you've accomplished, you've been kind of fed that there's a catch to what you accomplished.
Yeah, like that you would not have done this if you would have changed. If you were a white male, then, and I'm not making it about race, but that's just how I think. If you were a white male, you would not have climbed this.
If you were A, B, and C, then this would,
then this would have not happened. Like
makes sense.
I just feel like I'm falling through the cracks that nobody has noticed.
Yeah, so you're not scared of embarrassment.
I am terrified of embarrassment. Yeah.
Okay, well that's part of it too.
Yeah, I think that's part of it because part of it is like if I get embarrassed and they're gonna realize because my biggest fear, like this time actually my biggest fear that I was gonna get kicked out the program. I didn't do anything to deserve to get kicked out the program, but my fear was they're going to realize that I should have never been admitted into this program.
Right.
That I was never smart enough to be admitted to this program. And so that fear literally is debilitating. It it was to the point of like stuff that I knew I needed to do to progress in the program. So like give my department a seminar, like talking about my research. I knew that I needed to do that in this semester, but I put it off because I'm so scared of getting kicked out of the program that if I don't ever give my presentation, nobody ever knows that I don't know what I'm talking about. Or if I never form my committee of like faculty members for them to give me guidance on my project, then they'll never be able to figure out I don't know what I'm talking about. So it's to the point where it literally stops you from moving. Or I'll speak for myself. It is fear to the point where it stops me from moving. And even I just recently had to get over the fear of this again, because I watched a podcast where a doctor was talking about his fear. It was a African American male talking about him dealing with imposter syndrome, going through residency and medical school.
Yeah.
And he was like, I personally think that a person never gets over imposter syndrome. You just learn how to cope with it. And I can see that personally happening. And I would hope that one day I get delivered from this, because it is. But I can see that being a thing. It's like I just have to learn how to cope with it. And I realized at big transitions in my life, that's when it really comes. So like now I'm preparing for my qualifying exam to like have my thesis project accepted. And it was something I probably should have done in October. But again, this fear of failing, this fear of getting embarrassed, of getting found out is so debilitating that I just don't do it. Yeah, I just refuse to.
Makes you stop moving.
Yeah, and so it's like even this last 2 weeks, I've been like literally having the email drafted to my committee to ask them to schedule my exam. And I'm like, I cannot push send because this is the end. Like they're gonna find out that I don't deserve to be here, and all this is for nothing.
Yeah.
At the point, so. But I conquered at least that little fear today, and I submitted the email. So I sent the email. So,
I believe though, imposter syndrome is a lot more common than we think.
No, for sure.
Because when you think about it, right, embarrassment, right, is something that people don't like. People don't like being embarrassed. Like, so making sure that you're not exposed and that you have your ducks in a row. That's something that weighs on people's mind. Like people don't like to be wrong and feel like they're inadequate. Like people don't like that. So I feel like a lot of people don't really realize that they may have this syndrome, right? So I think it's natural to not want to be embarrassed. But
I think the difference that comes is like people learn to be like, it's just a part of life. Like it's not the end of the world. But in my mind, it's the end of the world. Like, I just don't want to be embarrassed. I have a fear of looking dumb in front of people. More so than even being embarrassed.
The same. Because for me, right, like how you mentioned, for you, like feeling like your accomplishments is because of some kind of outer factor other than your ability. So for me, I feel like my level of imposter syndrome comes strictly from embarrassment. I'm terrified of embarrassment. I hate, like I said, looking dumb, feeling inadequate, like I said, being exposed or not knowing something. That terrifies the mess out of me. But I'll get into my story a little later. That's good, but you can keep.
That's a good transition to your story. I caught up, so this is where I am now currently. I'm coping with imposter syndrome, and I feel like it's slightly come back up. But I know what I need to do now to address it. So, but you can transition to what's your experience with dealing with imposter syndrome?
All right. So I guess I'll get into my story a little bit. It's not like a deep story or anything. I just feel like just throughout my life, I've been embarrassed enough to where I just don't want to feel that. So like just different points in my life where like I just really hate being embarrassed, right? And I would say the imposter syndrome ratcheted up in college, right? Because I'm going for an IT degree. So I'm around a bunch of nerdy white people who, spend their life, programming, and they're more engulfed in tech than I was growing up. I played video games. I wasn't interested in it, but they had hands-on experience with a lot of this stuff. And so, wanting to keep up, not wanting to feel like I don't know stuff. So, so that feeling, it's there. But what I want to get into even more than, growing up in college, I feel like even more so now, it's worse than ever before. And because now that I'm, I guess, one of the leaders of a congregation or a synagogue, and the fact that I have the responsibility of teaching and deciphering, the word and the scriptures and stuff, I feel much more of the imposter syndrome because I don't want to misquote the word. I don't want to, say something wrong, sound foolish, because I've never been someone that was a public speaker or even liked getting in front of people or saying anything, right? Because I remember even in college, in my oral communications class, I remember my very first presentation that I had to give in class. I legit got stuck in a part. I just sat there for like a good minute and a half.
It's not funny, but I cannot imagine.
And the teacher sitting in the minute. Look, the teacher in the back just like, what are you doing? I'm like, because I'm like trying to get my thoughts together.
Yeah,
I'm not used to being in front. Like, I don't like speaking. I like you said, I like playing the background because of the embarrassment factor. Like, I just like being a part of the crowd. I don't like being out in front, right? So I could just pinpoint just these different times where, like, man, like when I was put in front, I really fumbled, bro. Like when I played, when I was in the background, everybody else, I can kiki, ha 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 ha, yeah, that's great. Like, but when you in front and you fail or you make a mistake or you got something wrong, it's like the eyes on you, right? So like, I don't like that. So now that I'm in a position to where, even as a teacher, I'm an educator. I'm one of the leaders of a synagogue or whatever, deacon, whatever I am. And it's just like, yo, I don't like this responsibility, yo. Because what if I get it wrong? What if I say something that's off?
This is like fear of disappointment too. Like, I have the fear.
What if I get
like, I don't want to disappoint people.
Yeah.
The people who put me in the position, I don't want to disappoint.
Yeah, I don't want to disappoint nobody. I don't want to say nothing crazy. I want people looking at me like, boy, he don't know what he's talking about. Boy, he look up there looking nervous. Boy, he up there looking shook. I don't like none of that. I'd rather steer away from all that, right? So for me, being in this position where I got to teach, and especially being one of the leaders of a spiritual body, right? It's just, whew, that's a lot for me because I've never been put in this position, right? Even though I feel like, you know, I've always been a standout person. I've always been a black sheep, been different. I always like to do my own thing, march to my own drum. But being accountable not only for myself but for other people and for what I'm telling other people, what I'm teaching other people, that weighs a lot in my head. And I feel like, you know, I don't want to be exposed for what I'm teaching. And I think a lot of times too, when I teach, I find myself, now just a real transparent moment right here, right? So I feel like a lot of times, I think I'm getting better now, but a lot of times when I teach, I find myself trying to go overboard and trying to be super deep to mask the fact that I'm really scared. Sometimes, you know, I'll overthink when I teach. I'll, you know, find myself being in competition with other people because I want to belong. So instead of just being myself, I find myself being in this competitive spirit when it comes to teaching amongst the other people that I'm around, where it's like, no, we're all supposed to be growing anyway, and we're all supposed to be coming to a common ground anyway, because the Torah is about unity and about building, and everybody has certain strengths that they can give to the body. But I find myself, you know, sometimes in a competitive spirit where I'm trying to make sure that I'm not falling behind. So therefore, I gotta really show that I know something. Okay, so I find myself sometimes being in that space.
So it's crazy to think about that because we both deal with it differently. Like, you almost try to like psych yourself out to not think that you deal with imposter syndrome, and then mine is the complete opposite where I just stop at everything. I just halt. So you continue to move in it. And almost goes like to the opposite spectrum to seem really confident when you really are not super confident. Yeah. And the mind is just like almost to, what is it? Self-destruct. Like, I don't feel confident, so I'm going to just downplay everything I've ever done. So it's different to
now,
see how.
I will say I do that sometimes too, right? The downplaying. So like the fake humility. That's a part of the imposter syndrome, right? Where you're always talking down on yourself. That way somebody else can be like, oh, no, it's not like that. You're actually smart. So you're saying things to get positive affirmation or to get validation instead of just saying things that are just positive in general. We like to down ourselves hoping that somebody else is going to give you positive affirmation back. right? So I find myself doing that too sometimes. Like I've gotten better at that because I feel like, especially the last few years, I would say stuff that was so depressing about myself, looking for sympathy. But it's like we shouldn't look at ourselves in a depressing state. We should always be humble and understand that everything that we have, everything that we do, the position that we're in comes from God. But at the same time, be confident in your abilities. Be confident in what God instilled in you. Like it's good to be confident, all right? Confident in yourself. Confident is not arrogance. Arrogance is not the same as confidence, right? So it's good to be confident in yourself.
So that kind of goes into, I guess, the next section is like dealing with it. So ways that I've been trying to implement to deal with it is what you're along the lines you're saying, like understanding where the source of anything that I do. So the source of my knowledge, the source of my ability to succeed in school, it never came from anything that I could do. It was a gift. And so I didn't get myself here, and I won't be able to get myself through this situation. So just realizing who the source of my success is has been really helping me to not be so anxious, or like to be confident in the ability that God gave me. Not to the point where you're confident in my own abilities, because I know it didn't come from me.
Right.
So that's one way that I've been dealing with it here, especially here lately. And then one like practical, I'm all practical. It's not always this thing you can't grasp. But one thing I practically do is I keep a like tally almost of things that I've accomplished in my phone. I might not ever tell it to anybody or show it to anybody, but I keep it in my phone. So like stuff that I set out when I first started my PhD, I had a timeline of goals that I wanted to accomplish while I was here. And so as I knock those goals off, I go back and I log it. Okay, you said you wanted to go to this conference and present, and you did that. You said you wanted to go to this class, and you did that. You said you wanted to be up. So like all that stuff, I keep a tally in my phone as far as like the things that I've done. So then when I get discouraged that I can't do something going forward, I'm like, okay, Christiana, go back and look at all the things that you have been blessed to do, the things you've been blessed to accomplish. And that kind of reminds me of all the stuff that God has been able to carry me through and been gracious to give me the abilities to do, and He will continue to do those. So that's one thing that or two things I guess that I do. So what are some things that you do to deal with coping with your imposter syndrome?
Every day, I'm trying to relinquish control and give it to God, right? Because at the end of the day, Proverbs 1:3 talks about, trusting the Lord with all your heart, mind, and soul, and not lean onto your own understanding. He'll make your path straight, right? The famous verse that people know. When we trust in Yah, when we relinquish control to Him, right, He'll guide us towards our purpose, and He'll make sure that our purpose is fulfilled. Mm-hmm. Because He designed every human being to a God-given purpose. So if we are aligning ourselves with Him, He's going to make sure that we prosper in whatever it is that He called us to do, right? So I'm starting to get to a point where I'm leaning on Yah and not necessarily worrying about what people may say and people may think, because we can't control what people think, what people say, how people react. Only thing we can control is us. I say it all the time, even at school when I'm dealing with other coworkers and frustrated with students and stuff. Hey, you can only control what you can control. Don't worry about the other variables. Don't worry about, the outside sources that you can't control. Control what you can control. So I try to keep the mindset of, I'm going to control what I can control, right? And I'm trying to get to a point where I'm not fearful of embarrassment, right? I want to get to a point. I ain't there either. Trust me, but I do want to get to a point where I'm not fearful of embarrassment, right? And just even having this conversation, something just came to my mind. Like I'm just starting to realize how important it is not to embarrass others or even to offend others. We was talking about this last night in Bible study, right? We was reading Luke 17:18, and in those I believe Luke 17. Could be wrong, but in Luke 17 it talks about where Yeshua talked about offending, right? And it talks about how if you offend others, you might as well be like one with a millstone hung around your neck, right? Just showing a picture of how bad it is to offend or embarrass people, right? How, and even in Jewish or Israelite tradition, oral tradition, stuff like that, it's a really big deal when it comes to offending. Offending or embarrassing someone is synonymous with sin, right? It really is. And so, so embarrassment is something that human beings don't like. Like, no, I don't care. There may be, like I said, there's exceptions to rules, but I would say majority of human beings hate feeling embarrassed, hate looking, inadequate, hate looking dumb, hate looking a certain way, right? We all want to, be astute, and people look at us with a certain respect, right? But yeah, so I feel like, I'm just trying to, make sure that I'm just trusting in God and, allowing him to direct. And I'm not worried about outside stuff. I'm not worried about what people saying, how people think, because I can't control what people think, And not everybody gonna like everybody. Not everybody's gonna like you anyway. Not everybody's gonna agree with what you say. Not everybody's going to, be on your side all the time, and that's fine. That's life. But we also say this though. We also have to understand that it's okay not to know stuff. I think a lot of times too with imposter syndrome, we feel like we have to know everything.
Yeah.
So, dang, this person found out I didn't know this. Oh my goodness, life is over, right? And so sometimes I feel myself doing that. Like I study my butt off. I'm trying to be astute. I'm trying to do my due diligence. And then, dang, I didn't know that. How I didn't know that? Oh my goodness, life is over, right? I just got exposed. I didn't know that. But it's like, it's okay. And I'm starting to realize a true wise person understands that he knows nothing. Okay? So there's so much information in the world. It's impossible to know every single thing. So you have to have the mindset of keep learning. Just stay learning. It's okay to constantly be a student. You'll always have to learn. You'll never know everything. And a true wise person understands the more that you know, the more you realize, I don't know. I don't know. Right? So this is good to keep things in perspective. Have a positive outlook. Try not to think about what other people are thinking, because a lot of times we try to get into other people's heads and other people's minds. Like we can't do that. We'll constantly be in this battle of trying to figure out what people are thinking. You just can't, right? You just control what you can control. I say it all the time. And I feel like most human beings battle with something like this, right? People don't like being embarrassed. We don't like feeling like we don't know something. But just understand you don't know everything. You can't be in other people's heads. Can't worry about what other people think about you. But you can only do your best. Just do your best. And whatever it is that God has called you to do, whatever Yah has called you to do, just do your best. And the chips will fall where they may. But yeah, is there any last remarks, last things you want to say before we end this off? Or what
in the great words of JV, what do you say? Cream rises to the top. That's what I said. Cream rises to the top.
Yeah, that's a fact.
Shout out to the rabbi.
Crazy. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope there was something that you gained from this conversation. Just let us know if there's anything else that you would want to talk about. Put it in the chat, in the live chat, or put it in the comments. So this has been another episode of Shabbat Conversations.
With the Avads.
Yeah, with the Avads. It's been real. So we'll see y'all later. Shalom.